Good evening, afternoon, morning, night, whenever you find your way to watch or listen to this. Yes, it's been a while. Yes, it's about to be week 4 of the college football season. And yes, hardware is back. I'm joined always by my co-host and good friend Jackson. And I mean, Jackson, you're wearing the NFL on the sidelines hat. I had no idea. This is how much I'd been out of the game, out in the wilderness and desert of California. It looks like a regular NFL hat, but they just added a division banner. So I mean, I don't think it would have been worth my investment.
You know what? I kind of regret it. It was way too much on Fanatics. It's not even like one of the super nice ones. It's a little bit flimsy, but you know what? It's comfortable. It as you said, the division banner, and it's got the nice shield on the side. It's not PFT's from Barstool's fit that I sent you on Instagram. It has just an epic NFL shield hat and then a shirt with all 32 teams. If I could find it, I'd probably buy it. But hey, this will work. So love the very comfortable, not worth $30, which is why I paid for this one. So
Yeah, I mean, for sure. This hat definitely not close to $30. A thrift store purchase, Providence Bruins for our AHL fans. So hopefully we attract a new crowd to this podcast, minor league hockey fans. But with that being said, we're back. It's been a while. I've been in the desert, trying to find myself as a man. Nah, just kidding. I was paying my dues back to Uncle Sam. To be honest, I mean, what a wild week 3 was. My first week of watching college football. In a way that I was able to watch and just monitor most of the action. To be honest with you, I'm surprised, Jackson, that you're wearing a Buccaneers hat, given there's a certain school that plays at Raymond James Stadium that gave the Florida Gators trouble this past Saturday. So I'm quite surprised.
And you got to throw that in there that they rent Raymond James out every other Saturday. But yeah, man, that was a tough game to watch. Did not anticipate USF of all schools being a stressful game. But hey, it's all love. My mom grew up in St. Pete, right in the Tampa area. Right, my cousin actually went to USF, so all love for the Bulls. But glad that was over. Way too stressful. If you know what I'm talking about, if you watch the game, that kick that was missed by USF, it's a miracle it was that close with how bad the snap was botched. That was insane that he barely missed it when not only were the laces facing him, they barely got held on time. So it was awesome to see USF's kicker, miss it, thankfully, but just how awesome of a kick that was. I could really appreciate that. And sigh of relief.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I was surprised by the result too, but that just shows that Jeff Scott has South Florida on a great trajectory out there in the American. And granted, a weaker American, not just in the coming years when Cincinnati, who else? UCF and who's the last school? Houston end up leaving for the Big 12. But I mean, just a weekend American, which we'll talk a little bit in detail if you watch Monday Night Football Bowls and Booze, which is also back this yesterday. Then we talked a little bit about this weekend American, but I'm excited to get started. Before we kick off, Jackson, you have anything else to add?
You mentioned Bowls and Booze. I do want to kind of promote that for a second. If you don't already know the story behind it, Omar and I personally hated the halftime show that ESPN was putting on every week. We decided to just talk bowl games instead of listen to Adam Schefter and then put it on Instagram, right? So we do a live stream. If you're watching the Manning cast, watching Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, hey, pull up Instagram if you're not already on it during the game. At halftime, we'll talk about usually go a little bit into the first quarter or usually go a little bit into the second half rather. We talk a little bit of analytics from MNF and then we just talk bowl games and enjoy a drink or two with it usually as well. So.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a fun time. If you know me, if you've seen my writing, shameless plug, that I love writing about the bowl races, and it started today. I'm already beginning the preliminary ideas for bowl games for my writing. So just love talking bowl games because it's more than what happens on the field. It's also geography and whatnot. So without further ado, if you watched our week 0 and week 1 pre-recorded previews, we began our podcast by continuing our grand partnership with the HBCU Piston Showdown, which, if you're not aware, has a national television contract now with the NBC family of networks. It will be broadcast on CNBC at 1 p.m. Eastern time. I think 1 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, on the opening Saturday of bowl season. So it's a great event, a great showcase for HBCU All-Stars, and a little bit of a palate wetter for, I guess, leading into the HBCU Legacy Bowl, because I believe like there is a at least a double digit amount of players that went from the HBCU Piston Showdown to the Legacy Bowl on broadcast on NFL Network. One of those players that went from the Showdown to the Legacy Bowl was our friend of the podcast, Neil Boudreau, who did not hesitate to remind me when I sent him an NFL meme that the Giants are 2-0. So also a huge surprise. I know Jackson. I know your girlfriend's. I know. Sorry, not girl, fiance. I know Izzy. I hope she didn't hear that. I know Izzy is excited probably that the Giants are 2-0. But yeah, sorry. That was a long aside to say that we are continuing our partnership by selecting a HBCU Piston, player of the week, who will be the player to watch for the coming week. So I guess Jackson, do you want to start with your one player or
Yeah, I'll start with my HBCU Pigskin Showdown player of the week to watch. First of all, another note about the Pigskin Showdown. It was announced earlier this week that the Greater New Orleans All-Star Band is going to play at the halftime show. 170 members, going to be featured on NBC Sports. So we're not just going to watch Maria Taylor and Tony Dungy at halftime, right? Hopefully they'll pull out all the stops for our friends over there. But yeah, we'll get to see the band. Something I know is always awesome to see during the Celebration Bowl. Maybe they'll even throw Mickey Mouse out there again. So we'll see that. But no, Omar is saying no.
Please, no. I saw that in person and I was very confused.
Yeah, man. But I want to, for my player of the week to watch, I'm going to shout out the East-West Shrine Bowl for bringing him to my attention, because I was not aware. Andrew Farmer II, the defensive end from Lane College, a Division II HBCU. He leads not just HBCUs, leads all of Division II in TFLs. He's averaging 4.7 per game. Man, this isn't a fluke either. Over the past 13 games, he's had 13 sacks and 32 TFLs. That is a big sample size. That is a whole season, and he's still putting up that kind of production, which is insane. Their quarterback, Michael Huntley, hasn't looked bad on the other side of the ball either. So Vyman Brown is putting together some great stuff. And if you follow HBCU football, close, especially at the D2 level, I'm sure you already know the name, but man, Andrew Farmer II has been killing it out there. Just want to bring some attention to him.
Yeah, and I gotta say, like Lane College, Jackson, I'm really impressed with not only your selection of Lane College, but even more impressed with your selection from the Shrine Bowl 1000. Could this be that your favorite All-Star game is now the East-West Shrine Bowl? Could it be? Say it ain't so. Once
they get a Mars Candy partnership, maybe it'll be a little bit easier for me to say that, but gotta stay loyal to Jim Nagy for now.
Fair enough. I mean, well, if you look at Lane College, that is a team that is on the rise out there in the SEAC. They played Arkansas Pine Bluff. They played them very well. They were leading 21-20 at halftime of that game, ended up losing only 48-42. So it's only natural that their offense gets attention. They got their first win last week against Clark Atlanta University at home. They play Edward Waters this weekend at home. So we're looking at potentially a 2-2 Lane College team before they head to Nashville to play Eddie George and Tennessee State. So definitely a great pick there, Jackson. I got to say, for my player of the week, for those years, when you look at the HBCU landscape, there is a couple classics that sort of caught the eyes of, I guess, of Black college football. And I guess Black college football in the FCS landscape, where you had the biggest one, of course, being the HBCU NYC football classic out at MetLife Stadium. Had a strong showing. Spike Lee led the Morehouse Maroon Tigers out of the tunnel. A very electric moment. Unfortunately, the Maroon Tigers are not electric on the field, as they ended up losing by 30+ to Howard. So that game had most of the eyes of, I guess, the HBCU or the Black College Football Nation. Had the pulse of that group. And then also too, you had out there in a statement game out there at the former home of the Rangers, the house that Alex Rodriguez built, Choctaw Stadium. You had Texas Southern blank Southern in a very surprising result for a lot of SWAC fans and a lot of Black college football fans. But also, Myron, that was a rivalry out there in the Tidewater region in Virginia. You had Norfolk State hosting Hampton, and in a hard-fought game, Hampton won 17-7, and they had a strong performance. Of course, keep in mind our players to watch, our players of the week and to watch are seniors. So these are guys that you may see on December 18th. Yeah, sorry, I forgot my calendar. Yes, no, December 17th. Come December 17th. So my guy is a grad transfer from Villanova, Quasheen Townsell, who had 8 tackles and 2 tackles for loss against Hampton. The defense looked great. Only allowed 7 points to Norfolk State. Granted, this is a Norfolk State team that just lost Jawan Carter, Deshaun Dixon, a bunch of other pieces, but still had still a strong team out of the MEAC. Great performance at Townsell, but to say the least, he'll have his work cut out for him this week as they play Delaware in a game that I'll talk about later on a lot more in detail. So Quasheen Townsell and Jackson's pick, the names already escaping me, are our players of the week to watch.
Andrew Farmer. So yeah, man. I hopefully we see him out there on December 17th for the HBCU Pigskin Showdown. Hope even more so that we see him. Hey, come late, maybe later in the night on the last Saturday next April, right? Maybe hopefully his name called. If not, if he doesn't sneak in day 3 of the draft, hey, hopefully a UDFA signing, right? That's always the goal for these guys. So yeah, I know our friends at the Pigskin Showdown can help make that happen, especially with the NBC partnership. So we'll go ahead and move on to our top 3 performers of week 3 of the college football season. I think we've both got 3 guys we kind of wanted to bring some attention to. At least for me, they're all on the offensive side of the ball. I'll start off. I've got Nick Baker, man, the quarterback from Southern Illinois, a huge win versus Northwestern. I know the Nebraska losses kind of put that Northwestern win versus Nebraska and Dublin kind of into perspective, but still, man, anytime you get a Big Ten win, I don't care who it is. If you're Southern Illinois, it means a lot. Versus Northwestern, 23 for 34, 241 yards, 3 touchdowns, another one on the ground, and only 1 pick. I'll be honest, I wasn't really caught up on my Southern Illinois football, and I am aware that they are 1-2. It's not because of Nick Baker, man. In 2021, just to kind of a little bit of perspective on it, they were 8-5, right? So this isn't a team that is used to having a losing record. They had a road win at South Dakota, a pretty tough place to play, especially in the playoffs. He's the school record holder for passing yards and the second most passing touchdowns in school history. But man, even better, he's the Mountain Valley Football Conference, Missouri Valley. My bad. All right. Missouri Valley President's Academic Excellence Award winner. And it was also on the MVFC All Academic team, something that obviously is something that will carry him long after football. For all you baseball fans, he has a .452 batting average when he played baseball in high school. I don't know baseball. I read that that's pretty good. So we talk a lot about dual sport athletes, even if it is just on the high school level. Guys like Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, something to keep in mind.
Yeah, it's a huge win. And honestly, I always one of my rooting interests in college football is the academic schools, which they will get a heavy dose of discussion from me in this podcast. But I really hope that Pat Fitzgerald is not falling apart in Northwestern, because he has done one of the most impressive coaching jobs of the millennium for Northwestern. But Nick Hill, what a great win for Southern Illinois. But you hope that this can be the springboard for them going into Missouri Valley play, because so many of these teams look good. North Dakota looked good. North Dakota had a huge win this weekend. North Dakota State may have narrowly lost to Arizona, but they're still North Dakota State. Who else? South Dakota State, of course, is still there. Mark Gronowski had a year to sit behind Crystal Adokin. That team is still electric. Plus, they still got Isaiah Davis, the guy who introduced himself to the country in the 2021 FCS championship game. And there's so many more, like Bobby Petrino and Missouri State gave Arkansas run for their money, like almost beat Arkansas in Bobby Petrino's comeback to Fayetteville. Like, you hope they can springboard, but I mean, they got a tough road ahead of them for sure. Like the MVFC is such a great conference. So my top performances, knowing me, would it be anyone else but Tyrell Robinson? Tyrell Robinson had 6 carries for 89 yards from the slot back position, but it's not what he did on the ground, but it's what he did in the return game that was truly transcendent. He had the first punt return touchdown, punt or kick return touchdown for Army since 2007 with a scintillating 73-yard return. And to make things even better, he fist bumped a 1965 graduate. His name escapes me, who was a prisoner of war in Vietnam. And so just a very warm, like heartwarming moment. Army's 1-2 now. If you look at Army, a lot of their, I guess, out of their remaining 9 games, they should be favored in 7 out of the last 9. So the 0-2 start. Not much, I guess, should not have alarmed a lot of fans, and Tyler Robinson kind of showed that with that electric punt return.
I didn't realize it had been since 2007, man, and then you really had to.
Oh, it's been forever.
Dampen me hating by mentioning a Vietnam POW, but yeah, man. But yeah, no, that was awesome to see. Any special teams is 1/3 of the game, right? So anytime you can make a game-changing play like that, man, really the win percentage, like from an analytics standpoint, man, I would really love to see like the win percentage probability, if he was tackled just before he reached the goal line, the EPA that one play would put on alone, right? So no, that's awesome to see. I'll go ahead. Speaking of the return game, this is my guy has a little bit of experience in that too. Adu Hilaire, the wide receiver from Bowling Green. If you follow HBCU football, then you might recognize the name. He played three years at Alabama A&M. He played in this win versus Marshall that went into overtime, right? So a pretty exciting game. Randy Moss type numbers, man. 4 receptions, 79 yards, and 2 touchdowns. This isn't his first experience in overtime this year. The 7 overtime game versus Eastern Kentucky. Man, they did lose, but you had a couple 2-point conversions because, you have to do that in alternating, right, in the new college football rules, and a touchdown in overtime. So a guy that's really relied on in crunch time and obviously put up some big numbers in the win versus Marshall. I mentioned special team experience. Haven't seen it so much in Bowling Green, but at Alabama A&M, 14 kicks for 283 yards and then 7 punt returns for 79 yards. Anytime you can bring that to the table, even if it's not in the NFL, whether it's, whatever level of football, anytime you can bring anything in the return game, it adds a lot and really, ups your chances, right? Just because the depth perception that requires, the knowledge of the ins and outs of special teams, right, that requires in order to be in the return game. It's not something any receiver, no matter how talented you are, you can just like jump in and do, unless your name's Percy Harvin, probably. So elite speed. He went to high school in the state of Florida, which, produces some pretty elite athletes. He also ran track and field, finished 3rd in the state in 2018. So we know he has top level speed, because that is not just against like other athletes from like, from HBCUs, from the power, or from the group of 5, like, man, like that is like, there are like 5 stars that are probably also running track in the state of Florida. So it's awesome to see that he has that type of top level speed and something that will serve him well at the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think that win against Eastern Kentucky, or that win against Bowling Green, got lost in translation through, everything that happened over the weekend. I mean, especially with I guess everything else that happened in the Sun Belt, whether it be South Alabama against UCLA with the near upset and the questionable fake field goal, which, like, hot take, I don't think it was that bad of a call. If it had worked, everyone would be saying it's genius, because South Alabama would go up 2 scores against UCLA with 3 minutes to go. Game's over, So, yeah, but I mean, got lost in translation, but it was a huge upset in the conference. I mean, involving the conference, with Marshall losing to former MAC conference mate Bowling Green. So very great win for the Falcons. The MAC is always balanced, so we'll see where they stack up in MAC play later this year. I mean, it's just so hard to project out who's going to be like great in the MAC or who's going to win it. So, excuse me, my second player to watch is if you like a good comeback story, you're going to like my next player, Luke McCaffrey. And if you're a casual fan, you may remember Luke McCaffrey playing for Nebraska, had a few starts last year for the Cornhuskers at quarterback. But now he's making a difference for Rice. And he started a couple games at quarterback last year for the Owls, but he's making a difference now as a receiver. He had 10 catches, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns in an upset win over Louisiana. And this one is definitely an upset that was overlooked. Probably the biggest win of the weekend for all the Group of Five, for any Group of Five program, or any program in FBS, because Louisiana had a 15-game win streak riding going into that game, but they visited Houston and Rice upset them 33-21, wearing some sweet throwback uniforms for out there in Houston. So Luke McCaffrey looks to be a good target. I mean, if you look at Rice's offense, Mike Bloomgren is a former Stanford assistant, so they like to run the ball a lot. Their workhorse, Ari Broussard, already has 51 carries in 3 games, averaging less than 3 yards a carry. And that's not a knock towards him, but that's just sort of like the ground and pound 3 yards and a cloud of dust style of Rice. And for McCaffrey to get 10 catches for 100 yards in that scheme, very impressive for him, especially with the fact that he was a former quarterback. And instead of transferring, like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with entering the transfer portal. But the fact that he stayed and was resilient and changed positions to help out the team to be part of something special out there with Rice, truly something that's worth admiring.
Absolutely, man. No, it is a guy that we've talked about on the podcast before, especially throughout his time in Nebraska. Probably could use him over there right now, right? And it's looking pretty rough there. But yeah, no, that's awesome to see a great win this past week, and definitely a guy we'll keep tabs on the whole season, right? So my last guy that I enjoyed watching over the weekend, Daveyus Richard, the quarterback from North Carolina Central. Man, he's quietly had a great year, but really deserves some attention, especially for beating a ranked team. New Hampshire this past week was ranked number 25. He was 18 for 27, only 194 yards, but 2 touchdowns. What he really won was the run game, though. 16 rushes for 140 yards and another rushing touchdown. On the year, 4 touchdowns, just short of 600 yards, 1 pick, and then 4 more rushing touchdowns on the ground. So he's been killing it so far throughout, I believe, 3 games at this point. 6'3", 200. So like a very athletic guy, played 4 sports in high school. And last year, hey, he was all MEAC second team, right? So a guy that has been recognized and hopefully continues to do so this year.
Yeah, and I mean, Daveyus Richard would probably have been one of our guys to watch for the HPCU Piston Showdown if he was a senior, but just shows the bright future that the North Carolina Central has. They have an easy game against Virginia Lynchburg, non-affiliated HBCU this week. Should be 4-0 coasting. And keep in mind that win in the battle for Durham out there, not in Durham, North Carolina, but Durham, New Hampshire, was North Carolina Central's first win against a ranked FCS opponent that was not North Carolina A&T. So a little bit of history there. But yeah, just a great job by Richard. Great game, truly electric. And yeah, hopefully he parlays a great junior year to getting some good attention, like Aquil Glass did in his spring season. Get some hype along with Felix Harper too. So great performance by him. For my last guy, I'm going also at the FCS level, but if you've listened to our podcast before, you would know how much that I loved EJ Perry. How much of an EJ Perry fan I am. How I was early to the EJ Perry bandwagon. I will say in 2021, after his great 2019 season. Well, his replacement, honestly, the Brown offense has not skipped a beat. Now, if their defense can stop allowing so much points, that would be great. But Jake Wilcox had an electric game against Bryant, who, if you remember, almost beat Florida International on the road, but due to some bad refereeing out there in Miami, did not beat the Panthers. But Wilcox had 356 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 3 picks. I mean, just a great performance out there. And it looks like Brown's going to be in good hands this year and in the coming years at the quarterback position.
Definitely, man. So, hey, a lot of guys that we enjoyed watching this past week. We're also maybe they're not on our list for players to watch this upcoming week, but hey, we're going to keep our eyes on them, keep tabs on them the entire season. Hopefully, continue to wish them success. We'll go ahead and move on to our players to watch that we're looking forward to coming up to this week, specifically maybe for the matchups that they're going to be playing in, right? So my first guy, OHara, the quarterback from Sacramento State, got a big game versus Colorado State on the Mountain West Network this week. Man, transferred from Middle Tennessee a couple years ago, though. He was like at Middle Tennessee, like the third leading rusher in the nation, like killing it in the ground game. Man, Asher is going against a pretty desperate team that's 0-3 and needs a win desperately. And this is, I haven't done the research. I'm guessing this is a paycheck game, or at least a scheduled game that is like meant to be easier for Colorado State. It's a small sample size, but what we have for this season from him is awesome. 12 for 15, a little over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then on the ground, 31 attempts, 167 yards and 4 touchdowns. And that's just through like 2 games. So he's killing it, going against a desperate team on the road, Mountain West Network. We'll see what he can do. So I'm excited to see the damage that Sacramento State can do as a whole.
Yeah, Asher OHara was absolutely electric with Middle Tennessee State. Not sure why he transferred, but I mean, fun player to watch. Honestly, he's a bit on the smaller side, but I can definitely see him like thriving in, starting off like I guess in the USFL or the XFL. And kind of working his way up, kind of like a PJ Walker, a guy that kind of gets counted out because of his size, but really has so much talent and honestly is just just finds a way to win and get yards. So my first guy to watch for this week, so Oregon for the first time since 1915, Oregon State and Washington State are both 3-0. So I'm going to spotlight Chance Nolan, a quarterback for the quarterback of the Oregon State Beavers, having a solid year, 746 passing yards and 7 touchdowns for 3-0 Oregon State. If you ask me, Jackson, no offense to you, this is no Florida hate, but I feel like it would have been so much better for game day to go to Oregon State USC, just given the stakes, because if Oregon State ends up beating USC, we're thinking at least like they're on a path to their first Rose Bowl since 1965, at least, if not the playoff. So that is a huge game in the playoff race, especially with how good USC has looked in the first 2 weeks of the season. So I mean, no hate, Jackson. I'm just saying it's like I feel like game day has been to Tennessee and Florida a lot. Yeah, Tennessee's resurgent, but it's like this is like honestly the more unprecedented storyline, and Chance Nolan's like at the head of it. A great experienced quarterback who just doesn't make many mistakes.
Tennessee, Florida is like always early on in the year, right? And both Florida and Tennessee historically have been teams that have like very high hopes that doesn't always work out. And like they aren't always the teams of like the Werfel and Manning era where like these two, like this is a deciding game for the national championship in September. Like it's not necessarily like that anymore. These teams like should be like at minimum undefeated going into this game. I know Florida dropped the game to Kentucky earlier this year, but like still high hopes for the SEC East. So I was a little confused by the decision, which is, if anyone's happy about it, it's me, but like, I still don't quite get why they chose. I thought it would be either like USC, Oregon State. Again, that's probably where it should be, but like Oregon State isn't ranked somehow. I don't know why, but so like kind of ruled that out of the scenario. And then especially with it being on the road to Oregon State, and then Kansas Duke, I believe, is another one that a lot of people have talked about. But yeah, man, I'm excited to see, still watching stuff. But yeah, I'm actually going to talk about Oregon State USC a little bit later. So we'll go over that a little bit more in depth. But keep telling us about your guy.
Yeah, no, that's all I had for Chance Nolan. I mean, Chance Nolan had a good year last year. Had I think 19 touchdowns. That was before the bowl game. Like 19 touchdowns, like single digit picks. Doesn't make many mistakes. Oregon State had a solid run game last year with BJ Baylor. BJ Baylor has since departed. Now they still have a solid run game. But I'm excited to see what they can do in the North, because as it looks, I mean, Oregon looks kind of vulnerable especially with the blowout loss to Georgia. I think Oregon's win over BYU is more of an indictment of BYU than it is a statement for Oregon. Given and in the long run, I think honestly like more statement of Georgia than it is anything about Oregon. I still think Oregon is still vulnerable in the Pac-12 North. So at the very least, we could have an Oregon State team that ends up with like 1 or 2 losses with a chance to still play for the Rose Bowl. Come in Las Vegas on the first Friday night of December. So excited for Chance Nolan. He's going to be the heart and soul of that charge.
We're getting sidetracked here, but just a quick question. I want to get your opinion about this with BYU. BYU is coming off of a very late, very lengthy physical game versus Baylor. Dave Aranda obviously is a coach that is known for being tough on defense, being tough on running the ball, and being a very physical, like prides himself in having a physical team. And then Oregon comes in, a very fast team, a very fast pace, maybe not always like the toughest, but like will wear you out eventually if you aren't Georgia. Do you think if it had been BYU Oregon in week 2 and then BYU Baylor in week 3, we would see like a different result? Or do you think that it would have, like, Oregon really is that much better than BYU?
I mean, shoot, I think that's a good point you bring up. I think it may have been different, honestly. Now that you say that, I think it may have been different, but it's just like, it's such a stark conference, a stark difference, like the styles of play. I mean, we know Oregon likes to play fast now. Bo Nix looks really good. He looked really good in the system last week. 5 touchdowns. He looked pretty crisp. So I mean,
Bo Nix, Bo Nix, man. Like every other week, he's gonna be up for the Heisman, and then like I
all right now
love Bo. Like no hate. It's just like we know who Bo Nix is, and like the ceiling is very, very high. So like, of course you're gonna take him. Of course you're gonna start him because you might get a 5 touchdown game. But like, it's the Jameis Winston college football, man. We know who he is. He can win you games. He can also lose you them. That's all I'm gonna say.
All right, yeah. I mean, shoot, I have nothing more to add, honestly. But you kind of stumped me with that question. But yeah. I mean, we can go on to your next guy. God.
I didn't mean to stun you, man. I'm just saying my opinion on Bo Nix as a guy who's watched him for the past few years, as we all have. I'll go ahead and go on a much later note. I think we can all agree on this one. This one isn't as controversial. Bashul Tutton, the running back from North Carolina A&T, has got a big game coming up this week versus South Carolina State. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. But, man, so far on the year, 13 carries, 133 yards, and he's popped off a couple that are almost 50 yards or over. That was in his last game on the season, 44 attempts, 280 yards. So just over a 6-yard average, right? Almost 6.5. And then, Omar, what do I say every week? If you can't catch, you can't play.
You can't play.
As a running back. Exactly. We got to put it on a t-shirt and credit MJD. 10 receptions for 58 yards. Not half bad. For a guy who's or for a team that runs the ball a lot, and that's their strength. So awesome to see. Looking forward to watching Tutton this week.
Yeah, I mean, NCAA, strong lineage of running backs. You got Tariq Cohen, who I hope someday makes it back on NFL field. Truly electrifying player who's been haunted by injuries, and I just hope he can make it back. You also got John Maine Martin, who was a star in 2019's NCAA squad. Had some trouble last year. But I mean, still like a very solid player. I think he ended up playing in the HBCU Legacy Bowl last year. So I'm not sure where he's playing now, but definitely a prime candidate to play in the USFL or XFL. So I mean, definitely a strong lineage of good running backs for NCAA. So I'm also, for my next player, I'm gonna go with another running back also too, because we know college football, the Heisman is a quarterback centric award now. I'm gonna go with LaDamian Webb out of South Alabama, who's averaging over 100 yards per game and had 124 yards on 16 touches versus UCLA for South Alabama. I mean, you kind of wish with the efficiency like that, he has 51 carries and is averaging over 6 yards a carry. You kind of wish with more efficiency that the Jaguars would feed him the ball more, But the Jaguars look primed to be honestly a bowl team and could honestly take their division in the Sun Belt. Because the way it is, the Sun Belt East is looking really stacked. The West, Louisiana looks, I wouldn't say vulnerable, but this isn't the same Louisiana we've watched the past 2 seasons. So realistically, any team out in the West could make a move. Well, not any team, but a team in the West could make a move to, make some noise out there in the Sun Belt and make the championship game. So Damian Webb's definitely a guy to watch. I'm not sure if South Alabama has any weeknight Sun Belt game, but definitely a team to watch out of the Group 5.
Yeah, absolutely, man. No, I mean, a guy that we've watched and kept an eye on for sure. So that'll be awesome to see this week. I'll go with my last guy, Daveyus Richard, the quarterback from Tulsa, right? So he's actually right now the leader in all of college football for passing touchdowns and passing yards. And he's doing it with only one interception. A really tough loss to a Wyoming team that's kind of confusing in hindsight because of how decimated Wyoming was by the transfer portal. They had so many guys leave, right? And then Tulsa is like looking pretty good, especially in the passing game, like second in the nation in passing. So it like doesn't really make much sense. They barely beat Northern Illinois. They're coming off of blowing out Jacksonville State. They should from this past week. Man, his game 4 Eastern versus Ole Miss on the SEC network. This is an Ole Miss defense who's only allowing 4 points a game. It's a chance to be slowed down or a chance to really show what he's made of versus a very tough SEC defense. I'm not saying Tulsa has like a legitimate shot. Don't get me wrong. Like, this will be a very unexpected upset. This isn't one of those like group of 5, power 5 games or like they're on an even surface. Like they're not. Ole Miss is just better than Tulsa. There's no way around it, but it's still like we can still see what he's made of with the passing game. I'm not going to be looking like I'm not going to like not watch the game and see, oh, he only had like 250 yards. Like, okay, clearly is like not made of anything legitimate. Like you kind of, it's one of those games, like you're going to have to watch the game. You're going to have to see more of the ball placement and decision-making and the accuracy to like really get a feel of like what Daveyus is like going to be made of against competition he might see at the next level, right? So we'll see. One thing that I really like about him, though, he does have like some great receivers and like there's a clear leader on that Tulsa offense, but there are like 7 receivers on that team that have at least double-digit catches, which is like unusual for this early in the year. So hopefully he can spread the ball around, force Ole Miss to play like some type of, zone or at least like thin them out in man-to-man with a cover 2 to where like they actually have to cover everyone. It's not like their Z and Ys are going to be used as like decoys or clear routes. Like they actually have to like cover everyone, right? So that's really like his best shot is like, hey, getting through his reads quickly. Hopefully the Tulsa offense can go against the Ole Miss, rush and like just get the ball out quick, make the right decision. It's going to be a tough game, but if anyone's up for it, hey, at least this year it seems like it's Daveyus. So.
Yeah, Daveyus Richard he's experienced, started all of last year, replaced New Orleans Breaker great Zach Smith at quarterback. But if you remember Tulsa in their peak in 2020, what were they known for? Zavon Collins, won the I think the Bednarik Award for best linebacker, and it was almost unanimous. Like he was by far the best defensive player in college football in the 2020 pandemic season. Like he was the best. But now, I mean, it's nice to see Daveyus Richard and the offense get some love out there for Tulsa. Like you said, that shootout against Wyoming, a thrilling game. I don't know if he can go throw for throw, with Ole Miss, I guess score for score, with Ole Miss. But this is a Tulsa offense that's better equipped to face, say, the Memphises of their conference, the SMUs. They're better equipped for sure now with another year of experience with Daveyus Richard. So, I mean, I really like Brynn as well. Definitely not my favorite American Conference quarterback. Nothing against Brynn. I mean, there's another guy on both of our minds that, we're probably going to talk about later on, in detail. But, yeah, Brynn is experienced and ready to lead Tulsa to, another bowl appearance, honestly. So, you got something, Jax?
No, I was just going to say, like, I'm looking forward to seeing how he handles the challenge. That, like, 3:30, 4 o'clock slate is definitely, like, one of the weaker ones this week. I'll be watching Florida, Tennessee, but, like, definitely trying to keep an eye on there, especially if it's close.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, I haven't made my schedule yet, but something I still got to do. But for sure. Going on to my last guy, I think a game, I guess, that should be on everyone's schedule is James Madison versus App State. You have sort of 2 different eras of FCS powerhouses, our former FCS powerhouses playing against one another in the same conference. Everyone loves the Sun Belt now because the Sun Belt is sort of that last frontier of what makes college football special with these regional rivalries and everything. And so you have Todd Centeo, who is quietly having a great year, probably one of the best years so far for any quarterback in FBS. He's got 400. Well, first off, I'll just say Todd Centeo is a 6-year senior. He's very well traveled. If the name's familiar, he played for both Temple. He played for Temple and Colorado State. Started for Colorado State last year in the last year of the Steve Adazio tenure, a very disastrous 2-year run for the Rams. But, he's had a great year so far this year, 452 yards, 9 touchdowns passing, 139 yards rushing. And it's like, honestly, I think Centeo can get himself a lot of good publicity with the win against App State, because App State is America's darling. They beat Texas A&M. They had the wild game against North Carolina. Excuse me. And now they just came off the Miracle on the Mountain Part 2. So everyone's talking about App State. It's like, what better way to get not only national attention, but potentially a dark horse Heisman campaign than beating Appalachian State after all this hype, So definitely a game to watch out. Todd Centeo is a name to listen. And again, like Luke McCaffrey, another redemption story. 6-year senior at his third school, and he's just lighting it up out there for James Madison.
Yeah, absolutely. App State, a team that got a lot of attention this past week with College Game Day heading down to Boone. Luke Combs being the guest picker, which was awesome to see. But yeah, this is an App State team that just had some, like, no other way to put it, like, just luck on their side. Running the Big Ben Hail Mary play. If you listen to the College Game Day podcast as well, you heard Reese Davis talk a little bit about that. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy to see. There's no other way to explain it for App State. We'll see how they can face up versus JMU. They didn't necessarily deserve to win their game against Troy. So I don't know if we'd be talking about it if that ridiculous play didn't happen, but it's certainly something that we'll keep an eye on. And hey, if App State is like legit, if these Cotton Bowl projections that include Appalachian State are like accurate, then this should be an easy win, right? Like there shouldn't be much doubt. This shouldn't look like an even matchup. Like we can leave Troy up to luck, but like James Madison, we should like kick out of the water. So, or blow out of the water, I guess, rather is the proper phrase.
I mean, James Madison though, is like, they are well equipped to, they were probably like one of the most well-equipped teams to make the FBS jump in recent memories, because they, they've made title game appearances and everything.
You're not wrong. App State is we've talked about predictions on Bowls and Booths where they're playing USC in Jerry World. Like that's James Madison is not that level. So if we're serious about putting App State in that like New Year's 6 category, this is a game that they like have to win comfortably. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah.
But no, I would agree with that. If they're content going to, I don't have the automatic bids in front of me, but whatever bowl game is like not New Year's 6, but like not being played 2 weeks before Christmas, then awesome. Like, cool. That's great. But like, if like we're serious about them being up there and like playing USC, then yeah, they should win this. That's where I'm getting at. So.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's fair. I mean, no hate towards James Madison. Like James Madison
should
be up there soon. Yeah. They should be up there soon.
Like, no hate to James Madison. I'm just saying that, that they should be, App State should be on a different level if we're
right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree with that then. Yeah. I definitely agree with that.
Definitely. Nice, man. We'll go ahead. We'll go with the games to watch. I mean, we've touched on a couple of them with our players to watch, right? But we'll get a little bit more specific in these for our games to watch. I'll start off with my game, South Carolina State, North Carolina A&T. I talked a little bit about
A&T Jackson. A&T.
What did I say?
You said AT&T.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
That's the second time you said I can't.
I'm asleep by now, typically.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
I can't let you say that again, bro.
Versus North Carolina A&T, not AT&T. NC A&T, brutal start to the season. I mean, it's hard to not have one when you like go against North Dakota State and like a Power 5 team in Duke, right? But they dropped their first game of the year to like North Carolina Central. Who, I mean, they just beat a ranked New Hampshire team, but like still it's been like a very rough start, kind of like Army, where like there's still hope to like salvage the year, but you just like look terrible in the first couple weeks. South Carolina State, rough loss to UCF. I don't know what else we were really expecting. But then they, hey, they beat Bethune-Cookman 33-9, and then they had a really early bye week where they were off last week. Man, special teams is something I want to talk about with this matchup. It's been a strength for South Carolina State. Don't let the meme pages fool you. South Carolina State has had some good special teams this year. But they've been a struggle for NC-A&T, especially on the kickoff return unit. It's just not been pretty. As far as the other phases of the game, when South Carolina State offense and like the North Carolina A&T defense, kind of how that matches up, man, NC-A&T, they have to get off the field on third down. They're giving up 78% of third downs, which is just like, you're not going to win any games when you're giving up 78% of your third downs. And on the other side, South Carolina State has to stay on the field on third down. They're only averaging about 12.5% this year. So we talk about strength on strength. I hate to say this is kind of a weakness on a weakness, right? But where their strengths are, man, South Carolina State needs to stick with running the ball. They haven't been able to average even 100 yards really in the passing game. So, hey, let's accept your identity. Let's make it a strength. Let's be a run-first team. They've got Kendall Flowers, the freshman. They've got Ja'Cory Benson, Alex James, running back by committee with those three guys. And, hey, let's just ground and pound and control the clock and control the time of possession. For North Carolina AT&T versus when they're on offense versus South Carolina State, man, North Carolina A&T only like 2 receivers with 10 catches, right? So, like, they know who their receivers are. It's not really going to be like the slot or anything like that. They're not going to have their 4th or 5th guy out there and make a huge impact. So, hey, hand it off to Bishul, who we've talked about. And I mean, overall, they are a balanced offense on paper. Like, they're averaging like right around 150 yards each in the passing and the running game, 156 and 146 respectively, or 154 and 146 respectively. But man, same thing, same advice I'd give to South Carolina State. Run the ball first, hand it off to Bishul. Seems to be your most talented back. And, hey, control the clock and hope that South Carolina State, can't get off or stay on the field on third down. So.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, the loss to a North Carolina Central for A&T. I mean, everyone talks about, the Aggie Eagle Classic, especially with them getting that shimmer out there at Bank of America Stadium. But make no mistake about it, I saw something on Twitter, some NC-A&T fans on Twitter talking. I'm sure Dwayne, our good friend Dwayne from the Yard HBCU can attest to this. South Carolina State may be a bigger rival to NC-A&T from what I've heard, from what I read on Twitter. I mean, these schools have played every year since the 20s, almost. And there's no love lost. I mean, what better way for NC-A&T to sort of get the season back on track than beating Buddy Pugh and his tough South Carolina State team. So definitely a great measuring stick game for both schools, and a great rivalry too, which I'm not sure how often we'll see it, with NC-A&T moving to the Colonial Athletic Association, which is going to have 15 football members. So you can imagine that there's probably only going to be like 2 spots for FCS non-conference games, with one of the non-conference games being a FBS paycheck game. So definitely something to watch there. Enjoy that rivalry while you can. So for my first game, I know we hinted about a certain American Athletic Conference quarterback that we both like a lot. We talked about Mike Pratt leading up to the Oklahoma game last year, and he almost did the unthinkable. He almost helped Tulane do the unthinkable, which is even more mind-blowing now after you remember that Tulane went 2-10 last year on the road at Norman. Almost he came a yard short of converting a 4th down with under 2 minutes to play, and continuing Tulane's game-winning drive. So definitely something that haunts Tulane fans. But Tulane this weekend will host Southern Miss, and they are looking for their first 4-0 start since 1998. In 1998, Tulane went 12-0 and went to the Liberty Bowl in the first year of the BCS, but the BCS was not yet equipped to I guess factor in, Conference USA schools and schools in the Group of Five. Well, not the Group of Five back then, but the non-automatic qualifying conferences. So the New Year's Six participant too has come from the American Conference every year since 2017. That streak is highly in jeopardy, with Cincinnati looking very human this year and Houston off to a disappointing start. So Tulane looks like one of the last hopes for the American Conference. In the last meeting too. This one's an interesting tidbit for me. Tulane ran for 427 yards and 7 touchdowns in the last meeting 2020. Rumor has it that Cameron Carroll is still running in Hattiesburg to this day. He had 15 carries for 163 yards and a 32-yard receiving touchdown in that game. Now Tulane's offense looks a bit different now. They switch offensive coordinators. They aren't running as much option concepts nowadays. They're really letting Michael Pratt shine as a passer. But despite the slight scheme change, Michael Pratt has much improved as a runner this year with 20 non-sack rushes for 149 yards compared to having 152 rushing yards. I guess I was too lazy to count for sacks in 2020, but he only had 152 rushing yards in 2020 with sacks and 229 with sacks in 2021. Pratt also, of course, has thrown for 658 yards and 6 touchdowns passing. Southern Miss, they're a bit, I think they're solid on defense, 23 points per game, but this is a team in the middle of a rebuild and a team that's looked better this year now that they're not using 10 different quarterbacks, including Frank Gore Jr. taking snaps. So should be an intriguing game. I don't think Tulane takes this one easily. I think they're 13-point favorites. I think Southern Miss covers, honestly. But again, like Tulane should not be looking ahead to conference play. This could be dangerous if they look ahead. But Tulane, as we mentioned on Bowls and Booze, Sports Illustrated has them projected for the Cotton Bowl against Penn State, a 1979 Liberty Bowl rematch. And even better, a school like Tulane with all the odds stacked against them in the American being probably, the best academic school for now in the conference, just one of the great stories of college football this year, especially with their win against Kansas State.
Absolutely. No Southern Miss to the top on this one, and we'll see how it plays out. You're right, though, man. It's amazing that Tulane was that close to beating Oklahoma, like a very good team last year when they went 2-10. They weren't the powerhouse that we thought that they would be. We're a year early to the Pratt train, so to the Pratt hype train. But yeah, man. Excited to keep that one. Omar, what time and where can we watch that one on there? Or do you have it in front of you?
I do. That game will be 7:00 Eastern on ESPN Plus.
Okay. I thought it was on ESPN Plus, but I was like, I know they've got that like awkward. I think I'm still thinking that there's the USA Days. I was gonna say like CBS Sports Network. I know they used to be on that a pretty good bit, but I forgot they made the move. Yeah. I'll go with my next game. You talked a little bit earlier about USF. USF at Louisville this week. Noon Eastern on RSN, and it feels a little bit like a panic game for both teams. USF is coming off of a high, right? They almost beat like a ranked Florida team on the road. If they drop this one, they're 1-3 with 2 double-digit losses, like a very bad start to the year, even by USF standards. And if Louisville loses, they're 1-3 with 5 ranked teams left on the schedule. Like, could easily drop to like 1-8 and end up your season like very like by a wide margin missing bowl season, right? As they've got those 5 Clemson, North Carolina State, Pitt, Wake Forest, and they've also got Kentucky at the end of the year. So like a very difficult schedule left. It's kind of confusing. Like we talked a lot about Malik Cunningham and like all the talent he has. Like he's having success on the ground, but like still 3 interceptions and then like 3 more fumbles that like thankfully weren't lost, but like still a concern. Only 2 receivers at this point with over 100 yards, which like we're almost through September. You should have at least a third. And then their leading rusher outside of Malik Cunningham, Tyron Evans, is hurt for this week. So it's a very difficult time for Louisville. USF is like facing like it's going to be tough to make bowl season if you start out 1-3, right? So both teams' strength is running the ball. Both teams really just need to stick with doing that, right? And if you dedicate yourself long enough to it, even if you're behind, you're eventually going to wear down that front 6 to 7 where you can, set up play action down the road. And I think that's going to be easier for USF, honestly. I mean, I saw every snap of them last week. They looked great. They really controlled the clock and controlled the game, where Florida was only able to run like 20 plays in the first half. And Louisville head coach Scott Satterfield, he even told the media, like, hey, this is like probably the best offensive line we're like going against so far at this point in the season. So it's a strength. It's more of a strength for USF than it is for Louisville. They really need to tap in, figure out whatever they need to do in the playbook to get Nolan Cunningham like a little bit more involved and a little bit more successful, because obviously, man, he's talented. Like, that doesn't just fall on Malik. Like, there are some bad decisions there occasionally, but you got to put your players in situations to win, right? So I'm excited to see it. I feel like I've been like much more negative on this podcast than I usually am, but I am excited to see this one. So it's, I talk about the downside. The upside of winning this game is like, hey, this could really be like a turning point for either team. For USF, they were like right there versus a ranked team last week. They could get a very good win versus a Louisville team we all had high hopes for. And for Louisville, okay, you know what? We started out early September bad, but we're turning the page here. So, and you could break even at 2-2. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more of a red flag game for Louisville than it is USF, because as we mentioned, USF had low expectations in the American. They're still kind of like a year away.
They did, but what do you think their fans were thinking, like, about halfway through the night versus Florida? Like, man, we could beat a ranked team on the road and like beat the university, like the flagship school of Florida for the first time, like ever, so I think the low expectations for USF kind of died off, around 8 or 9 p.m. local time. So last Saturday.
Even then, like even if they lose to Louisville, if they play a competitive game, there is nothing to be ashamed of for that program. Like this year, looking forward to, like, especially now, like USF could be in a position to take UCF's spot in the American, where they are, let's see. I mean, yeah, FAU is going to join the American, but like they are alone in that Central Florida area, that Central Florida region. Yes, I call it a Central Florida because Tampa is technically like Tampa's more north than Orlando.
Florida. We're all confused by it. It doesn't make sense. But
yeah, like they have that area of Florida to themselves. FAU is in a crowded Miami area to recruit in, with Miami and FIU, but like USF could end up being like, I'm not going to say like UCF, but it'll be easier for them to succeed with UCF out of the way. So yeah, very intriguing game, and also a good old Big East matchup. Two former Big East schools playing together. It's like it's 2007 again. I love it. On to my next game. The best quarterback you've never heard of is in the Bronx. He's in the Bronx. He's in New York. And I'm not talking about Daniel Jones or Joe Flacco. I'm talking about Tim DeMorat, the Josh Allen of the B train, where he has 1,302 yards and 16 touchdowns in only 3 games. Last year, believe it or not, like he's almost halfway on track to equaling his passing total from last year. And last year he had a great year as well. He had 3,214 yards for 31 touchdowns for the Rams. Fordham is averaging over 49 points per game, and they're allowing their defense allows 42 points per game. This week they play Ohio. Last year, Ohio let Duquesne win the Northeast Conference's first game against FBS opponent. Duquesne, of course, did not win the Northeast Conference. It's kind of in the middle of the pack there in that conference. So Ohio looks kind of vulnerable. Their offense has not really been clicking so far this year. I know they beat FAU in the first game, but playing against Penn State, playing against Iowa State, the momentum hasn't really been there. And I mean, the offense, it might be a shootout, and I just don't know if Ohio is equipped to win a shootout. But the key matchup here in this game is the Ohio defensive line, against pretty much Fordham's offensive line and Tim DeMorat. As Ohio has 9 sacks in 3 games, including 5 sacks against Penn State. And we saw what Penn State can do in the trenches against Auburn last week. So, I guess last Saturday. So definitely an intriguing game, a game that looks like, another prime over FBS win. And it could mean 2 wins for the Patriot League over the MAC, of course, with Holy Cross winning on the Hail Mary against Buffalo on September 10th. But if Fordham wins this game, you could very well see Fordham and Holy Cross being, each other's only loss, where either Holy Cross loses or Fordham loses. Both teams are about, 10-1 or 11-0 in conference. And you have the Patriot League sending 2 teams to the FCS playoffs for the first time since 2015. This game will be seen at 2 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN Plus, but definitely an upset pick to see for sure. And definitely it should be a shootout. There should be some fireworks.
Absolutely, man. High offense is what everyone loves to watch, right? So hopefully we get that this week, and thanks for telling us that, hey, where to watch that stuff, because that's not always, those aren't on the promos during College Game Day, right? So sometimes you kind of have to dig for it a little bit. So thank you for bringing that up, man. I'll go ahead and go with my last game. I'm going to go ahead and go with a game we talked about a little bit earlier. Again, USC at Oregon State. I'm not necessarily predicting Oregon State to win, but I will say this: Oregon State has some serious depth. They have 5 different receivers with touchdowns. They have 6 different players with rushing touchdowns, 4 different players with INTs, and 2 different players with forced fumbles, right? So deep on both sides of the ball as far as guys that can be productive in major categories. They're also expecting a sold out crowd. They're actually selling standing room only tickets for Reser Stadium. I don't think there are too many people traveling from LA for the game either, right? So I think it's going to be all Oregon State fans, all a sea of, they're actually wearing orange this week, right? So it's going to be all orange and black in the stands. For Oregon State's best chance to win, man, keep Jack Coletto on the field whenever you can. On 4th and shorts, they put their inside linebacker on the field as a fullback, get some extra yardage, scored the game-winning touchdown as time expired versus Fresno State, and then last week had a couple 4th and 1s on there that he converted, right? So make the offense aware that, hey, you've got 3 plays to get us 9 yards. We're going to have Jack Coletto go to all Troy Anderson and go get the rest himself as the inside linebacker. So I'm excited to see. It does kick off at 9:30 Eastern time, so it is going to be a little bit of a late game, and we're, excited to keep track of it. So.
Yeah, for me, I'm almost I kind of want Oregon State to win this game, but I'm more.
Oh, I do too.
I'm more intrigued. Yeah, the thing is though, it's I'm kind of torn because I would much rather have Oregon State make their first Rose Bowl since 1967 than have them make the playoff, So it's I'm hoping they beat USC. It's definitely a program to find and win, but I kind of hope they slip up along the way and end up making the Rose Bowl. Because for me, I'm a college football purist, I just love the Rose Bowl so much that I want teams with their droughts to be broken.
And in the context of college football, a Rose Bowl appearance, honestly, I feel means more than a playoff appearance in a weird way, because we don't have the stats hey, this is going to be their first playoff since 1952. We don't have that, right? So we weren't even playing a national championship not that long ago. We were just voting on it. So I think it certainly means something. The Rose Bowl has been around almost as long as college football itself has. So hey, if they can get a Rose Bowl appearance, that'd be a lot better than getting blown out, 62-3 against Ohio State or Alabama. So.
Yeah, for sure. And again, with the expanded playoff, it remains to be seen where the Rose Bowl stands in college football nowadays. So definitely a crossroads for college football, but we'll see what happens to the game. Moving on to my last game. We have just a huge statement game out of the CAA. We have a clash of unbeatens. We got Delaware at 3-0 playing Hampton at 3-0. Hampton has not really been tested. They've beaten Tuskegee, they've beaten Howard, and they've beaten Norfolk State. But honestly, this is the biggest game in Hampton's young time as a Colonial Athletic Association member. Delaware, of course, being one of the flagship schools in the Colonial Athletic Association. They have multiple national titles to their name. Just a rich tradition out there in FCS. And of course, they beat Navy on the road already. to begin their season. They're coming off a fresh blowout against a ranked Rhode Island team, ranked in the FCS polls. They blew out Rhode Island. So just a team that looks primed to be a favorite in the CAA, especially after James Madison has lost. Johnny Buchanan is leading a Delaware defense that's allowing 12 points per game so far in this young season. He has 42 tackles in 3 games, looks primed to have over 100 tackles this season, possibly even over 120 if he continues on the pace he's on. Hampton's offense has their work cut out for them after a 17-7 performance against Norfolk State, where the offense didn't look as crisp. Of course, the offense is no longer led by Jet Duffy, the Texas Tech transfer who played in the HBCU Piston Showdown, who really led a strong offense last year and also signed a picture for my 11-year-old brother, which I'm grateful for. But yeah, like it's a strong game. And again, like if Hampton beats Delaware, I think it kind of just validates their decision to leave not just the MEAC, but the Big South for arguably one of the strongest conferences in FCS football. So that's my last big game. I got a couple quick hitters too, just before we say our closing thing. So a couple more games to watch. Won't go as much into detail. You got Cornell versus Yale. You have Cornell hosting Yale. Yale had lost 38-14 against Holy Cross. Holy Cross had only beaten Yale 5 times in over 30 meetings. And the 24-point loss to Holy Cross was the worst loss by Yale to Holy Cross in the series' history, and the first loss by more than 2 possessions since 1967's 26-14 win for the Crusaders over Yale. So a thing to watch there. Cornell, on the other hand, had a very historic weekend. They beat VMI on the road. They were the first Ivy League team to beat a Southern Conference team since 1939. Yes, the FDR administration. And the first Ivy League team to win on the road versus the SoCon. So, as Big Cat would say, this league, so just a great game, a great measuring stick for Cornell. And it might be time if Yale ends up losing to Cornell, it might be time to kind of like wave some warning flags out there in New Haven. My last quick hitter is out here in Las Cruces, an hour away from me. You have New Mexico State hosting Hawaii, and New Mexico State is favored as a 4-point favorite, I believe, over Hawaii. They're favored at home, and New Mexico State has never beaten the Rainbow Warriors in 10 meetings. That could change this weekend. They have never even lost to them by 1 score. Their closest loss is an 11-point loss in, I think, 2011. So you could have a history-making game out there in Las Cruces. Definitely rooting for the Aggies there. And Hawaii, no offense to our great friend Brock, but they did not look very, I guess, convincing against Duquesne last week. Like Duquesne hang around in a 24-14 victory on the island. So
it was tough. I mean, the game kicked off at midnight Eastern time, so I didn't get to watch it. But from everything I saw about it, that's like you want to win that convincingly. So
it's a rebuild. But we're always rooting for them.
Yeah.
So those are my
next
two
they've been
quick
lost to Louisiana Monroe's first year at Bama, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. So we could have a situation there, a ULM beating Alabama situation. New Mexico State beats Hawaii. So those are my 2 quick hits. Jackson, you have anything final to add for this podcast?
If we were big enough to have any haters, the headline would be like Jackson compares Timmy Chang to Nick Saban. But yeah. No, nothing, man. I just can't believe, dude, we're going to be like a third through the season after this week, which is the third through the regular season, which is insane. So it's football always flies by. Izzy would beg to disagree, but I'm excited to see it. And hopefully we can it feels like it's so early, but we're at the point of the season, we should be establishing identities. We should know who we are at this point after this week. So hopefully these final teams that we kind of have some questions about, we can get answers to.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, again, I don't want to think about already being a third of the season already, but shoot, here we are. But I'm excited for this weekend as always. Got a great slate of games, wherever you look. FBS, FCS, Division II, Division III, NAIA, for goodness sakes. It's football to be watched, and I just ask that you do watch it. So till next time, everyone, we'll be back. No longer have duties for Uncle Sam. I guess that'll bring me out to the desert. So I'm excited. Until next time, peace, love, and soul, everyone.